Assalamualaikum everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Umair Javed, and on behalf of Seascape Technology, I welcome you all to today's Tech Talk session. I am the moderator of today's session, and the topic that we have for you today is embracing the future, the scope of XR technology in real estate. So, our speaker for today's session is our very own senior product designer, Madiha Javed. Madhya is an architect turned 3D visualization specialist, product designer, and a manager with expertise in XR based prop tech and virtual environments. She is an expert in creating immersive virtual tours, implementing accessible design, and integrating AI technologies for enhanced productivity. Madhya, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Omer. Hope you're doing well.
All
And
good,
thanks
all
everyone
good.
else for being here as well.
I'm sure everyone's looking forward to a very insightful session, and we'll see what you bring to the table because XR technologies, and we had a previous session on AI. Things are getting really interesting with the advancement of technology. What do you say?
Absolutely. I believe it's an exciting time to be here, and it's an exciting time to be actually presenting this as well, especially because it's something that's been in the making for so long and it's finally coming into the mainstream. So it's quite exciting to see how people are adopting this technology, as well as the applications that are actually out there and how people are going to interact with it. It's just going to make the future a lot more exciting and interactive for everyone.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. Exciting times to be alive. So I think we'll jump straight to it, and I would like to just remind the audience, in case anyone has any questions, just feel free to ping me up. Use the chat section, and I will redirect those questions to Madiha, and she will answer those questions either towards the end of the session or dependent on if there's something very relevant, then she can choose to answer that right there and then as well. So, guys, jumping right into it, Madiha, the first question that I have for you is, what is XR and what are the different types of XR? It's a very code-worded term, XR. So, what do you think this is?
So, as we jump into it, let's kind of break down what XR actually stands for. It's actually extended reality, which is an umbrella term. Extended reality basically will break down different kinds of realities. Now, when we say different kinds of reality, we're going to kind of jump into the physical reality versus the virtual one. Firstly, there are like different types that have been in the making for a while. We're going to begin with the first most popular, as well as the one that's the most applied one, is augmented reality. So AR. It's basically anything that's basically overlaying on top of digital, like any over digital realm or any overlaying digital aspect or virtual component that's in a physical world. That's basically your augmented reality. So real world experiences that you can see through virtual dimensions or virtual layering, that itself counts as augmented reality. Now, virtual reality itself is basically something you can break down into multiple categories as well, just like augmented reality. However, you do have a little bit of category where virtual reality has been something that we've been using without actually calling it virtual reality.
Interesting.
Everything you see on your screen right now is basically virtual reality. It's not something special anymore. However, it is something that was incredible at a certain point. That's exactly what's happening with technology like mixed reality at the moment. Mixed reality, it's a mixture of virtual and augmented reality. Now, we're not just overlaying the physical environment with digital assets and virtual environments, we're actually kind of immersing people into it. So as we move forward, I'm just going to share this little diagram because this explains exactly what we're trying to come across with is that reality has is on a different spectrum for everyone, just like everything else in life. So reality itself, when it's physical, we also call it matter reality. The more you overlay on top of it, the more immersive you make the digital assets. Now we're using the term digital and not virtual, is because digitization itself was something that was happening a long time ago. It's a term people are more accustomed to. We can also swap the term with virtualization, which basically makes elements more virtual and visual. Now, anything that is basically overlaying on a physical realm, which is your existing matter reality, is going to come towards augmented reality. The more and more immersive it gets, it's coming towards virtual reality. Now, if it's fully immersive, which basically, when you say fully immersive, what do you mean? You mean like you've basically blocked off the physical world. You are now wearing a head mounted gear or any kind of device. To be honest, it could be a screen, it could be a room that you're standing inside, where you have now been fully immersed into the virtual environment itself. That's virtual reality. Between
Interesting. Yeah.
virtual augmented, that's somewhere in the between, that's where you lie with mixed reality, because now you're not fully immersive, you're aware of your actual physical matter reality, and now you have overlaid all these digital and virtual elements on top of it. For just to kind of further break down this category itself, is that just like in VR explained, there is fully immersive. There is also semi-immersive. Semi-immersive is basically where mixed reality sits between. Whereas non-immersive is exactly what we're seeing on the screen at the moment. Similarly, in augmented reality, you have two main types, which is markerless, which is trigger, something that's basically without a trigger, and then there is marker based, which is basically something that requires a trigger. Now, these are all
Interesting.
kind of dependent on your use cases. If you think about it, you've been using augmented reality on Snapchat all this time. That's something that is using a bit of, like it's projecting something on top of your face, but also
I think that's a
requires
perfect
to
example.
study it, right? And
Yeah,
that's one of the most common features that we've been seeing, that how fast it got adopted. That's not to say
that's
that it's
true.
not being used in other industries. For real estate, there's a lot of application in construction sites. This is where you kind of want location based approach. Why? Because imagine going to a site and now you have a construction site where an old building is standing, and you want to visualize, as a property developer, you want to be able to see the new design on top of this old building. For that to be able to happen, you need to kind of have a location based AR. So you're on site, you pick up your device and you can scan on top, and you're able to actually see on screen that, okay, now I can see what it might look like on site. And that overlay of digital aspect is basically your AR location based. And that's markerless as well.
Amazing.
These are there, so all of these types are dependent on different use cases. The more you deep dive into different typologies, the more you understand that everything is based around a user's need, which is one of the reasons, like the way Snapchat has used their applications, it has actually targeted people who are interested in just kind of gamifying the whole concept as well, right? They're kind of
I
also
know. I
playing
think
with
it
the
was a winning
users.
formula. It was a
Absolutely,
winning
they're just kind
formula,
of playing
got
around
everyone
with people's
hooked.
wants. Yeah, and now
And
I feel like
at
there's
one
like
point in
Gen
time,
Z,
you're
if you,
becoming a
yeah. So no, I mean exactly. So Gen Z at this point, if you think about it, they have a bit of a dependency that's built up, right? I've had a few debates about this with people as well, whether putting on a filter, does that actually take away not just a realistic bit, but of course there are some filters where they're distorting your face, right? That's creating a bit of a bad image for
You're
people.
absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Whereas on the yeah, but on the other side, there's also this whole concept that if somebody wants to hop on over and doesn't want to wear makeup, you just gotta switch on a filter, and you look good, you look great, lights amazing. But that's not to say there are other applications, but this could be more useful as well, right? You could kind of play around with different filters where it actually could be educational, it could be a playful turn. I mean, I don't know, a lot of people haven't played this or not, but like there are a bunch of games that have come up with AR as well that kind of utilize a lot of applications that are marker based, and they are also markerless. For example, Pokemon actually was something that was geolocation based AR.
That had
Pokemon
a whole
picked
hype
off
on its own. Pokemon Go,
not
right? I
just
remember
hype.
people were going crazy.
Absolutely. And I believe that there's a huge group of people that is, or I wouldn't even say group anymore, it's a community. It's a Pokemon Go community that people just cannot get out of it. Like it's something that you
Yeah.
start, and now you're building an entire family and you're meeting people, you're interacting. So that was another successful approach for this itself. Um, this is just something that I want to bring up, that what in real estate itself, what how you can apply this. You have staging, designing, touring, you can actually visualize, and then you can also, analyze data, and you can then apply these things on different domains. Now, when we talk about different domains. We are talking about marketing, we're talking about industries that can actually influence healthcare, all of these. They do have these applications that can be used as well. However, in real estate specifically, you have non-immersive VR applications where you can actually just take your screen, go for expos. That's where you can demonstrate all of these things. You have fully immersive where you do have a head mounted, for now, just because we're in this current time, we don't have any other means of being fully immersed. We're kind of using head mounted
Yeah,
glasses, and that's something that has a hardware dependency. So you need to make sure that whether it's wireless, or whether it's with a wire, whether you are connecting with your
agree.
system, a workstation, or whether you're connecting with your mobile, you have to kind of make sure the hardware is there for it. So it does have a massive hardware
Absolutely.
dependency, and that comes at a cost,
Yeah, your
and hence.
eyes, the senses of your eyes and the hearing, they're all immersed into that one device that's basically hooked on to you. So you're absolutely right with the
True.
hardware dependency that does exist.
And I mean, one of the reasons I believe that most people haven't adapted to it, because it does have a bit of a health, I guess it's a bit of a issue that we haven't resolved yet. Is the fact that it does cause most people, it causes nausea the first time they use it. That's because our hearing and
Hmm.
our audio and visuals, they need to be completely synced. If there is even a slight bit of lag, most people have, and most people will experience nausea. We haven't all the way countered yet. A few companies like Meta has been practicing and researching, and they've been attempting to kind of resolve this issue, but we're not there yet completely. Of course, this is an interesting time to
I
be
mean,
alive, but we never know,
humans are
like, at this
really, really
point.
complex. We are complex beings, honestly. And this,
Uh,
for medicine, something works for a certain type of people, and then something doesn't work for certain type of people. I think that's what makes us unique, but also provides its own challenges for technologies like these, where one solution doesn't really fit all. So I think I completely understand the challenges with this.
True, true. There can't be a one solution, absolutely, actually, because it has to be accessible, which means that you have to take into account people who have low vision, or people who are not able to see farther distances. That's going to be another challenge itself to counter. And in this case, like I
Agreed.
said, based on the requirement, on the need, you can switch the technology. If fully immersive is not working, you go into augmented reality, you go into mixed reality. You can even go into web AR, VR, which is something that's picking up. That's going to be browser based, yet you still have a little bit of a dependency of bandwidth, so network bandwidth, and you have to make sure that you have a good internet connection,
100%.
basically. So that's something that's going to be there as well. So all of these
100%.
technologies come with like a bit of a challenge. Um, yeah, and this is, I think,
That is amazing, no, honestly, and
so yeah, this is something that I was going to mention, that is just it's part of experimenting and growing with this tech. It's something that we're all kind of learning to adapt with, as well as kind of learn how to build different products with. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. I remember, when we were young, this 3D holographic imagery started popping up in, programs like Star Trek, and people were so excited. You had movies where you had all maps of different areas, they're just swiping through their hands. So as kids, we were really excited. And you gave a perfect example of Snapchat and how well they've used this technology, while without the use of these technical terms like XR, VR, people sort of do not get them confused. But when you look at it, Snapchat filters are exactly that. And I think that just shows you how well this technology has not only solidified its place into the minds of people, but also evolved. And that brings me to my next question. How has XR evolved, not just from getting into movies, we're all made up, to now actually in real life? How is it evolving in the mainstream?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, most people have been feeling recently that this is something that's new, and everything is kind of like, advancing really fast. However, it's good to take into perspective at the moment that this has been in the making since like the 1960s. Like, it goes that far back.
Yeah.
So we are talking about, I don't know how many people might be aware of this, but it was actually a Harvard professor who made the first head mounted AR glasses. And Yvonne Sutherland, his experimentation bought, and this kind of like sped up this whole process. I mean, they look very retro. The glasses themselves are very cool, have a very like steampunk vibe.
Wow.
Um, but that
Wow.
basically initiated,
1960s.
yeah, so
Unreal.
that's where it started, where and then eventually in 1970s you had more AR laboratories where you were dedicated to building these things. 1990s we finally actually termed the coin augmented reality. And then from 1990s, of course, things went from virtual fixtures to kind of different kind of theaters and entertainment applications. You were now kind of figuring out how to bring this into the mainstream, but we weren't there yet. There have been
Mm.
simulation softwares. NASA has been actually building a bunch of like hybrid synthetic vision systems where this is something that would help them. Of course, imagine somewhere it costs too much to train on hands. You do require is tarah ki applications.
Or
For example, you have augmented reality, virtual reality. These are immersive solutions to create simulations. These
mm,
toolkits, which basically anything that's called an AR toolkit, is something that was made in 2000. It was made in open source library, so people can actually like play with it. So in Unity as well, you have a bunch of toolkits you can play around with. Again, a bit of a technical term, but the idea is to kind of a toolkit is something that's we're trying to simplify, right? We're trying to say that it's just a kit that you can play around with. Like we want people to kind of immerse into it. We want people to apply this technology into their daily life. We want people to experiment on building different applications on it. Education has been picking up on this as well, because the more immersive your learning experience is, the more you simulate that experience for people, the more your memory will
real.
actually remember stuff, right? I believe this
Yeah.
is a fantastic time for your kids or anybody's
Amazing
younger
retention. You're
sibling.
right.
Yeah, you can, the more you can actually associate your memory with something visual, I believe. And this again dependent on the kind of person you are. Not everybody is visual, of course. People, some prefer verbal, some prefer, so you can mix all of that up. You can have like, you can have notes layered on top of it. For us, and specifically in this current time, it actually kicked off in 2019. As soon as remote work became mainstream, a lot of people kind of understood
Ah,
that it
yes.
was difficult. It was a very challenging time to kind of figure out how are we going
No doubt.
to communicate, and how are we going to make meetings somehow more immersive. This is where Meta took like a whole turn as well. I mean, we had 2014 Google. If anybody remember, Google Glasses had like a huge impact,
Oh
right? A
yeah,
lot
I
of
remember. Yeah, it
cardboard
was something
glasses,
out
it's
of
them up.
sci-fi completely. And I think
Yeah.
they were the first of their kind which was commercially available, and I think that was really, really minimal, really classy, and it wasn't readily available either. So everyone who had it was that cool guy who had it. It's very
Yeah,
rare,
and
but
I think
really
it's
cool.
the interesting bit that I found was that like they were taking a very sustainable approach to it. They wanted to be lightweight. They were using cardboard, sustainable
Yeah,
material,
very
helpful
practical.
environment. Yeah, but of course, like the application itself required adoption for it to be more experimental. Then Microsoft came up with HoloLens in 2016, and then that's something that, if anybody remembers, was also something that picked up a lot of attention. But again, the results were not there yet, so we're still in
Hmm.
that realm where we're like it's not gaining enough traction because of the fact that you have to keep in mind that real world has so much to offer. What are you taking away from the real world that you can offer in that virtual environment? And I believe that kind of this remote environment, remote working conditions, being able to meet people, that itself was that one gap that was being filled. So 2019 onwards, it's become like a mainstream tech. Like a lot of people have been kind of using this, even and then especially in retail. Like this is something that a lot of people have been, and that's where like property comes into play. Like real estate property um, is quite crucial to be able to be accessible to people. You don't want to travel all over the world, or actually even in, I mean, one city to the other city, you have to plan out like a whole day, right? So being
You're
able
right.
to access a property that isn't accessible to you immediately, it's not next doors, saves you so many hours that you can at least be able to visualize and virtualize how you're going to interact with that space. So that's something that's been picking up more and more. Now, for us to understand how this happened, I think, yes, let's step back a little bit. And because we're currently, our scope is around real estate, we're going to kind of figure out what the problems are. So as mentioned, that like
Absolutely.
traveling itself, commuting itself is such a huge aspect of real estate. Like real estate agents have to be on the road all the time. They're usually on their phone most of the times. They have to go from one place to the other, one showing to the other.
It's a
So people
very,
who
very hands-on commitment, honestly. And there's no other choice. I mean, in the conventional world of things, there's no other choice. You have to be everywhere at all times.
Yeah, and that's tricky because I mean, as an agent, it actually limits your opportunities. So if you have the ability to be able to target more users or target more client base, you would want to take that. You would want to look for affordable virtual touring solutions. You want to have like economical virtual guidances. So now, what do we call virtual guidance? It's again educational aspect of real estate. In specific areas, real estate requires people to be trained. It requires licensing. In regions like Canada and US, they have their own sets of licensing. They need to be trained. You can't just go in there and become a property dealer. So you need to kind of keep in mind the market
Yeah.
knowledge is really important. So these kind of solutions can create a big scope for people to kind of jump into. You are saving cost. You do have lesser site visits, and the best part at the end of it is that um, as your client is able to make decisions faster, you're able to make sales faster. You have now a wide variety of choices to
No doubt
offer as
about it.
well. So this itself is a problem that we're kind of figuring out, that through these technologies you can actually create a whole lot of scope and a whole lot of interaction. So we're targeting the simulation and the virtualization of real estate. Um, Experience, and this is something that I feel like is going to benefit, and it's important to highlight how it's going to benefit these people, is that agents, clients, property developers, these are the main focal point for any real estate brokerage or even real estate clientele. People are kind of focused around how their lives can be made easier. So your client wants something, if they can make their decision, if they can make the decision faster, it's saving them time, it's saving you time, it's benefiting both of you. So if for an agent, if they are have the if they have the capability and they have the accessibility to these tools, where they can actually offer services that make people visualize elements better, it makes their life easier. They want, they want fast communication skills, and they also want to, for builders, for example, making a decision in a construction site is very difficult. As an architect, I can vouch for this.
Oh, I
I
can
think
imagine,
the
all
starting
the
bit
all the
is.
paperwork and even minor edits are just
Yeah, so
full of
designing
paperwork.
is the fun part, to be very honest. Like it's challenging. The challenging bits are to actually tackle issues that environment and the society will actually offer on site. But the on site construction bit, the property developers, the property real estate agents, basically having them communicate, having engineers communicate, this bit is really tough. Because people come from different areas. Now we have so many languages. If we have virtual tools and we are able to visualize things, we can communicate better. And that communication, that clarity itself, it creates a lot of ease for people to be able to make less mistakes. You lose a lot of money on construction sites when you on site decide that, okay, this isn't working, we need to kind of change or break down this wall, and we needed a window here, and perhaps that would have worked. Now that we have virtual tours where you have like building management softwares and tools where you have all information in a virtual environment, you can now make these decisions better. You can actually calculate cost on everything a lot more appropriately. You can actually do your structural
Yeah.
analysis. You can do environmental analysis of those 3D pre-construction projects. When we say pre-construction, we basically mean anything that hasn't been constructed yet, because you have a lot
I
of
see.
development that's happening everywhere around the world, right? You have like massive, massive projects building up societies, towers. All of them require a good amount of technical knowledge in terms of how you're going to build it. And that itself is a couple
Agreed.
of costs that you can save. Yeah.
I think how I see it, it's a win-win situation for everyone, the client, the agents, the builders, because now you have access to technology that saves everyone. I think the most is time, and time is money. And I think in real estate, that's probably the truest of all. So I think that is amazing. And you mentioned quite a few of applications, not just for clients, not just for agents, but for builders. The applications are limitless. But I think again, to to sort of narrow it down a bit, what do you think are the most popular applications, if you could just name a few that have been widely accepted in the society for real estate, in the real estate society?
So for real estate specifically, you have virtual tours that are very, very popular. I'm sure like at this point you've seen
Hmm.
360 images. Those
I
are
have,
just the
yes.
basic ones, right? That's where it all started. But like that's a virtual environment that you're kind of seeing of a real world space. You've just kind of changed how you're going to look at an image. You've added a bit of a three-dimensional aspect to it. Then you have and that's just one of them. You have virtual tours can be augmented. They can be fully immersive. So for pre-construction, you have different kinds of virtual tours. For existing buildings, the reason I would say that 360 are more successful images in terms of experience is because it gives you a bit of depth in a space that exists. You don't want to kind of just create a space or a virtual tour of an existing space that doesn't look hyper realistically,
Hmm.
as close to the reality as possible. But
Yeah.
if you were able to renovate that space, this is where your property modification bit comes in. So these three aspects, they're all interrelated and they can overlap as well. You want to do property layouts. So the real estate agents walking around can actually tell a person this is a partition wall. A partition wall means that it's not structurally, you're not dependent on this wall. So you can actually remove it altogether. You can actually create a window here. That property layout, that property modification, imagine being able to tour that in real time and being able to make these decisions on the go and using a bunch of tools can actually help you do all of this. And that is where augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality can come into play. So these
Very
are the
interesting.
main things that are actually happening at the moment. So you have a bunch of companies building products that are specifically for making renovation decisions, making pre-construction decisions, making even decisions to sell a property that is kind of in a bad state can become easier if you can help somebody visualize a better state of it. You know,
Yeah,
like if there's seepage on a
I
wall,
completely.
you can explain to a person. Imagine you just kind of scrape that off, or you have like a new, you have like PVC paneling on top of it. You kind of give solutions to a person as well while they're trying to buy something, and that absolutely should make it a lot easier for anybody to make a decision. So is there something that you would feel like you would have actually used in terms of a virtual tour? Like
I
what
think
how would you have applied in terms of, if you had to go to a site, would you have preferred going there physically? Because there are people who do have that requirement that they want to go physically there as well. And or would you be somebody who wants to sit where you are and be able to visualize a property?
I would probably want to adopt. Sorry, the voice kept breaking. So if this question is directed towards me, which
It
you
is,
can
it
just
is.
nod to confirm. Yeah, I think
Yes.
I'm a tech savvy individual, honestly, and I'll be honest, these technologies really do excite me. I have seen 360 view cameras. They're, I think, easier to pull off, but this fully immersive experience that I've recently got a hold of, I think it's a completely new dimension on its own. And for me, that's something that I would definitely prefer. And I feel the level of detail that you now have in these the visualizations, it's just crazy. I mean, keeping the VR and AR extra thing aside, even if you just look at computer games these days, back when we were kids, the games that we used to play, you could tell that their graphics were okay, playable. But now, I mean, you look at you have some viral videos going around on the internet, and it's sometimes really hard to differentiate whether this is actually a fake video, a generated video, or if it's an actual video. That's just, I think, it's mind blowing, honestly, and that really excites me, honestly, and scares me as well. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, I think everybody should be a little bit scared because yes, this kind of power in the wrong hands can be manipulated. We have seen over and over again how it can seep into bad
Yeah,
decisions as well.
absolutely.
But at the moment, what we can talk about is that it does have the capability of blurring lines between physical and real world. Like you're kind of trying to fuse the two, and especially at least in real estate, it helps you keep things a little bit more peaceful and actually be able to develop more. conscious decisions. That's what I would say. This is something that I can vouch for, is that
Hmm.
we don't have to worry about it going evil in real estate. Like, we can kind of expect things to take off if it was a political realm, but right now, I mean, this is a good domain to be in, to kind of be able to experiment and be able to virtualize these environments. Um, it is something that is up for debate as well, that whether it's good, is it really good
Hmm.
enough to kind of just virtualize a real world environment. Um, but frankly, as much as I've experienced and experimented with these tools, I've kind of realized more and more the power it gives you in terms of making better decisions of your location, your site, your property, the value you can bring to it if you have the capability of tweaking things that you can see before actually doing it on site. You can save, so a lot of time should go into planning. That's something that I feel like even Einstein vouched for, is that if you have an hour to do something, spend 55 minutes of just kind of breaking down that problem, and then take 5 minutes
Hmm.
for the solution. If you apply that same logic here, like, you do have the capability to now study your problem better. You can see in health as well that even in health industry, you can actually see some applications where they're able to teach and simulate environments. Even like in surgery, you can actually see different anatomy of humans on different layers overlaid on a screen, right? And that's, you were seeing it
Yeah.
virtually, now you can see it immersively. For real estate, the same logic applies. Imagine being able to visualize the construction or the anatomy of a building, and knowing that this is a problem that you can probably solve virtually better and then go on site. That would save you time, construction cost. All of the debate is kind of around the fact that, how much of real world are you depicting? There is a bit of a bias that people do come into play with this, where this is sometimes challenge, where people want to erase reality to the point that it looks good. Same logic with Snapchat
Yeah. I mean,
filters.
it's too
You want to look
perfect.
good, your building should look good.
That is
Um,
true.
there should be no flaws.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
You can
challenging
just
for the
code
most.
yourself to perfection in
Yeah,
the
I
virtual
mean,
world. While I mean, in the actual world, perfection is hard to achieve. It's really hard.
yeah, I mean, that's exactly why the world is working in a very distinctive balance. It's something that's been there. Imperfection and asymmetry is actually also in a way beautiful, but we don't acknowledge that. For us, I think, just to kind of come back to this reality, is that you have to understand that we have different technologies that are coming up. For example, like we were talking about virtualizing something, right? How do you virtualize something? What is that input you require, apart from like your basic plans, your drawings? There's so many different approaches people are taking now. You can actually have AI study a plan and create a bit of a 3D model. We're not completely there yet, but we're in the right pathway. So we are obviously going to figure it out at some point. We're getting there. There are also opportunities where people are actually using cameras to scan pictures. Like for 360 images, all you need is a camera. For LiDAR scanning, you need a LiDAR, which is a
Hmm.
laser based, like a device that
Yeah.
would have the technology. That's a hardware dependency. But you also can actually use 360 cameras. You can buy them specifically. So for somebody who requires that level of quality, you would go that extra mile, right? And similarly, there's something else that's been going around, is basically neural radiance field. So you have nerfing that has been picking up quite a bit, and that's something that
Interesting.
has to be, yeah. So you train
Nerfing.
those images, yeah. So you're basically training these images with, you're training a model with these images, where it then creates a 3D mesh based around, similar to what point cloud system does. Now these are technologies that are a bit more complex. We can't cover them in this webinar completely, but it's good to kind of have these terminologies just out there. Take a little extra hour today in a day and just kind of work around, or search Google, or search Bing, or search or ask ChatGPT. I mean, whatever your mode of research is, dabble into these things a little bit, because this is what's going to become mainstream. This technology is now aiming towards being used by masses. So everybody wants that, people should be able to adopt, which means that we are the requirement that we're trying to fill for, right? So we are the people who, we are the demand. We create the demand, and that demand has to be fulfilled. So this is not something that's going to be, that's targeting high end cost. That's not to say there are obviously companies that do want to target a niche market where it's basically
I mean,
more
there's going to be
trendy.
markets of all kinds. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be markets of all kinds. But I completely agree with you. And I think, if there's more demand from people, there's definitely going to be. Am I audible? Just by the way.
Yeah, yeah, you are.
Okay,
I hear
great.
you
I'm
too.
sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was saying, great, great, great. So I was saying, you're right. There is going to be active demand for this because who doesn't like this? The 3D visualization and this holographic technologies and even these cool gadgetries that you can have the variables on top of you. And I think the proof of this is how, you mentioned correctly, Meta completely rebranded themselves from Facebook to Meta and invested in technologies like Oculus. They were first, they had multiple variants out, and the people seemed to like them. They had extremely, different applications from the gamification element to people using them for as exercise tools. And then now I think we all know about Apple Vision Pro as well, how they've now also entered into the mix. And you know how history tells us that whenever Apple jumps into particular technology, that basically means that that technology is here to stay. So I think this is amazing. What are your thoughts on this?
So, I mean, yeah, I would kind of backtrack a little bit towards when we talk about future of XR. It's kind of a lot of technologies bleeding into each other. This is the bleeding tech perception that every company wants to adapt their ideology with, and it makes complete sense. Why? Because you want to make sure that whatever virtual production that's happening is happening on different mediums. You're targeting different people, different audiences. You're trying to make sure that you are able to incorporate as many accessible tools as you can, which requires you to mix AR with AI. You have nerfing, which basically means like using images and training an AI model to kind of then render that into a 3D point cloud system, which creates a 3D model of a sort. Apple already did that once before with LiDAR scanning. You would create a 3D of your room. A lot of people have probably played with that as well. There are a bunch of different companies that have been experimenting with these approaches. And the idea altogether has been to kind of create something that would get adopted a lot more faster. Now, where Apple's Vision Pro comes into play is actually that it itself was a play on mixed reality. One thing that they've been trying to do itself is that they've been trying to overlay digital realm with 3D elements, 3D virtual digital elements. So altogether, that's a mixed reality concept. Why is it mixed reality? Because you are at the end of the day wearing, you are immersing yourself in that experience. It's not fully immersive; it's
Mm.
semi-immersive, but it is actually enabling you to kind of work in your real world matter reality with something that's basically going to connect you with all the tools that they have. This is one of the best applications, or well, people are hoping they're going to make it the best
Right.
application out there. Again, hard to compete with the giants, but there's always hope to kind of break that monopoly a little bit, and there's always hope for people to kind of step up and build something that might be a little bit more unique. That's again, if you're kind of targeting a small niche, a focal point that is kind of smaller in terms of your application, it will you have a chance of entering that market. I mean, of course, as usual, Apple's Vision Pro is something that people are looking forward to. It is highly costly, but again, like I mentioned, anything that has a hardware dependency for fully immersive or virtually immersive
Extremely,
tools, you
extremely.
do have to take into account. Yeah, we have like so recently, if NVIDIA's GTC is something that you've been keeping track of, they also kind of have been tabbing. They've been actually talking about web XR, cloud computing. A lot of companies, especially
Mm.
in tech sector, people want there to be multiple platforms should be accessible. They should be able to use these tools, which is XR, AR, VR, MR, but they want it to be at a higher quality, which means you need to have better graphics card, better processing. Your
Better
CPUs need to be
processing,
able
yeah.
to render. Yeah, so the graphics card that we have out there, they're kind of advancing faster and faster, and I think because of blockchain technology, a lot of people started mining a lot. We did have that little in between phase where, we had a major massive shortage of graphics card, right? So that
Oh, I
that
remember that time. I remember that time.
yeah, that itself hit the industry badly. It hit
Yeah.
like a lot of shorter studios and companies that were trying to experiment a lot, because you had to now spend a bunch of money on just one driver, and that basically is something that we want to avoid as a community. We should not be encouraging or engaging in that kind of state of affairs. We should always try to make sure that we're kind of encouraging an open source approach, which means that we're giving people the tools, the ability, and we're actually developing more things. We're in an era where everybody is going to be like Michelangelo. You're going to be a mathematician and also an artist. You're going to be visualizing and virtualizing, but you're also going to be singing. And you have creators everywhere now. You have creators who are social influencers. You have digital creators. You have people who are becoming like generalists in different domains and using this technology in different areas. We're actually being able to adopt more um, characteristics, also kind of adopt more personalities that we're engaging with. So we're personifying a bunch of tools, and we're creating a bunch of apps that a lot of people will be able to engage with. And honestly, everybody is scared of how AI is going, but if and perhaps as we keep debating and talking about this, we're probably going to come to a point where we're going to be able to develop something that will be more accessible to a lot of generations, people who do have limitations, people with special needs. We are trying to kind of make a more
Hmm.
inclusive, accessible environment, and hopefully that will happen. So that's something that I feel like we should all kind of look forward to.
I com- no, no, I completely agree. I think the access to technology is has revolutionized. Honestly, there was a time, even if you look at smartphones, we had scientific calculators, then we had analog calculators, and now calculators are almost obsolete. Everyone has a phone. Literally, everyone has a phone. They're starting at $100 for a smartphone that is 4G, 3G enabled, and then you have apps like Snapchat that are actually using this AR VR technology on your face and having all those filters put on with such high processing, such limited processing power. And I think because of this access to technology and because of higher, greater data speeds, I think the possibilities are endless if you think of it in that term of things. Because in this in particular industry, I feel all of this is really important. Processing power, high bandwidth, all of these things are completely revolutionizing. If you look at Starlink as an example for Elon Musk, you don't even need broadband internet anymore. You're just connected directly through satellites. So I think if you combine all of these things and the applications that you touched upon, I think it's going to be a very exciting world forward.
Definitely. Well, I do hope that we start embracing this future altogether, but we do it in a form of a communal environment. We stop competing as much as we are seeing, Mark. And basically, I think that's something that a lot of people have been talking about as well, that how giants have started fighting amongst each other. But that's something that if we were able to avoid, um, we might be able to kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, like Elon and Mark's cage match was also on, it was hyping up quite a bit. But frankly, like you mentioned,
yeah.
if
I hope it
Starlink
happens.
was something, I hope we avoid it, because let's be honest, we have learned to become more and more civilized, yet we are kind of going back in this
I just
competitive
think it's just
region.
going to be more of entertainment, honestly, rather than anything else.
Yeah, but let's be honest, our planet is burning. The last thing we need is a little bit more entertainment. It might be useful to
Yeah.
kind of focus all this energy towards something that might help people develop things more. We might be able to fight better causes, or at least be
No,
able
no,
to
I
focus
completely agree.
on better. Yeah.
I do. I
So,
agree with your
again,
sane point of view, honestly. That's true.
yeah. Also hoping that at some point we're
No,
also
I think
able to
that is
kind of,
amazing.
bring our attention towards what and how we're developing something to make it more accessible to people and possibly make better decisions. I mean, digital twins is one way of kind of looking at real estate's application of how you can simulate and study and analyze how a building is using a bunch of energy, like who is entering the building, how much a room is consuming energy. There's so many applications where you can kind of learn more data, make better judgments. This is a point where I think we should kind of all be questioning how can we possibly use this in the best possible format, which is, learn, teach, and possibly just kind of expand our knowledge more and more.
Evolve. I agree. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's what the future is, and it's an exciting future nonetheless. Thank you so much, Madia. I think you've really gave out your knowledge bits of what you do. I think it's a very exciting field that you're in, and I'm sure the audience
Absolutely, yeah.
was really excited to learn about these new technologies and especially their applications, not just in real estate. I think the talk was really broad as well. That it's not just applicable in the real estate realm, but in education, in health, in energy, so many other things as well. And it's definitely an exciting future that lays ahead of us. Let's just hope we're able to, like you said, the saner voice, focus all our energies onto improving the lives of people and making a better impact, making this world a better place to live. Thank you so much, Madia.
Thank you.
Great.
Absolutely.
If
Let's hope to make it a better world.
we're all working towards it. If anyone in the audience has any questions, guys, we're 46 minutes into it, right on time. That's where we wanted to basically extend this session. If there are any other questions that you guys have for Madia, feel free to ask them right now. I will redirect them to Madia's way. If not, then of course, this session is live on LinkedIn. You will have direct access to both Madia's and myself's profile, and you guys can ping us up with any questions or any things that you feel like you need help in, and we would be really happy to oblige. Madia, I think let's just give a few minutes to if there's any other questions for people. Otherwise, we will call it a wrap.
Sounds good.
Great. I don't think there are any other questions coming our way. So, like I said, guys, any other questions that pop up, this session will be available on Cityscape's YouTube channel, on our Facebook profiles, on our social media profiles. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them, and we will make sure that all of the queries get redirected to Madiha, the talented Madiha, and she will use her expertise to guide you guys in the right direction. Thank you so much, Madiha, and thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. And we hope this session was as exciting for you guys as it is for me, at least, in terms of the technologies at play. And I look forward to welcoming everyone to the next session that we would be announcing very soon. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.